Welcome to this week's episode of Moving Forward Talk with Diana. This week we'll continue part two with Dr. Maxine Wilson.
Thank you. Again, I have taken over the platform, moving forward with Dr. Diana Clark. Roles reversed. I am doing Dr. Clark today. And previously we talked about her journey thus far. We've shared some of the lessons she's grasped along the way and some of the impacts that she's had. And so this week I want to continue with Dr. Clark, and I want to ask her a little bit about her support system. So she talked quite extensively about different support system at some of the most crucial times, some unsolicited, some just showed up. She was provided for. Talk about the importance of a support system, especially from the perspective that being a juvenile, an officer who is shaping someone, trying to bring them back. Tell us the importance of a support system.
When you think about the support system, it is very vital, because what I've learned over the years is sometimes we think that we're strong enough to do it on our own. And I've thought that for a very long time. But then you realize that most of the times it is a Band-Aid solution.
Right.
And sometimes we use that Band-Aid just to cover up the top surface. But deep within what that hurt or that pain or whatever the circumstances is, it is not being healed, but it is getting worse. Mm-hmm. So think about a little cut on your arm and you put a Band-Aid on it thinking, okay, this is going to heal it. When you take the Band-Aid off, you may see that the little incision on top looks like it's healed, but 2 days later or so, you may feel a pain, wondering what's going on. You may look at it, and there it is. It got worse. So, And I look at a support system. When I also think about a support system, I think about Luke. And I believe I referred to that chapter in my book, Luke 22, and I think it's verse 22. And I'm not going to quote that one word for word. But at the end of that verse, it said, and when you are converted, strengthen your brother, your brethren. And that within itself, because I always, or most of the time, refer back to that scripture when I'm trying to talk to someone, trying to encourage someone. And the reason being, sometimes you're trying to help others and they don't want your help. They're being so hurt that they're careful not to be hurt again, or they just don't want to talk about it. They don't want to have those memories. But the support system is very vital in that healing process. Mm-hmm. Because as I said, sometimes we're too weak in areas where we within ourselves is too weak. We have an encourager right there. There are days when all I need or all someone else need is a listening ear. Mm-hmm. Hey, Dr. Maxine, I'm having a bad day.
Yeah.
I don't want you to say anything, just listen.
I don't want you to try to solve it. I just want you to
And don't undermine my pain right now. Just listen. Because we also have a tendency, we're trying to be the support system, but we're undermining the other person's emotions and feeling. Mm-hmm. And that is why sometimes, even as a support system, we have to be very careful, because two people, you and I, may have shared the same exact situation.
Right.
But we don't cope. Our coping mechanism is two totally different avenues. Mm-hmm. And you may be saying to me, well, Bet, and I refer to myself as Bet because everyone calls me Bet. Bet, I'm just having a hard time forgiving. And then, because it's so easy for me to forgive, I am going to throw at Dr. Maxine, why is it the Bible said forgive? She don't want to hear that at that time. She already know what the Bible says. All she wants is someone to just listen. Do not undermine her feelings and emotion at that time.
Sometimes people just want someone to validate
Mm-hmm.
pain and the hurt that they're going through, not to be quick to offer solutions or comparisons, which is what we do quite often.
Right.
They just want you, like you say, hear me.
Hear me.
And
so, on the other hand of that, when we heal together, when we work together, and it doesn't have to always be healing from abuse or from anything, but when we work together, it makes the process easier if we're on the same page. Because we can be working together, we can be healing together, but we're not on the same page, and it make it totally chaotic. But when we find this common ground where both of us see this as a helping stone or is a great strategic tool, and we both can work in that strategic tool together, it makes the process much easier. And that is why I think whatever we are going through, we need a support system, especially if we have developed that trust, because we can't heal with everybody. We can't really work with everybody. We have to make sure we trust that person, because even though I may feel comfortable sharing about Diana Clark, Dr. Maxine may not be comfortable sharing about Dr. Maxine. So we have to make sure that our support system also can be as confidential as the other person wants them to be.
Yeah.
And that is one of the little pieces that I think we miss sometimes, because we can be standing in a group and we can be asking everybody to get up and share. Everybody's not comfortable to get up and share. And even if I was comfortable to get up and share among strangers and talking to myself now, because that's me for a very long time, if I was comfortable to get up and share among strangers, I could get up and look around and see, okay, there's a familiar face. I no longer wants to share.
Right.
Don't force the issue.
Right. I believe healing is a process. No matter what you're healing from, it is a process. And it is a process that people have to be ready. You have to meet people where they are and wait until they're ready for that healing to happen. Because earlier you talked about recidivism, and one could say, well, look at so and so, they went through it and that scared them, they've never gone back. But that's not what that person needs to hear.
Right.
Because that person is not at that place yet.
Right.
So in as much as we often feel like we're doing the best we can or know how, or we feel inclined to solve something, the best thing you can do is just not offer anything but a shoulder and a listening ear.
A listening ear.
I am talking to Dr. Diana Clark. I have taken over her platform, Moving Forward with Dr. Diana Clark. She is the author of the book, Moving Forward, You Like Me Can Overcome. It's been a really great read, and if you haven't read it, you should. There's so many lessons, and it may not be your exact story, but there is a takeaway in there for you. From that, outside of, being acquainted with you, we've come to see you as a woman of consistency and dedication and focus. From beginning to end, we've seen those traits in your writing and what you shared with us. What influenced you to develop these traits?
To be consistent. And I say this, and I have to laugh at myself. I believe in never giving up. It doesn't matter how long it takes. And I'm going to share this one story, and it's also in the book. And I believe that's that was one of my great influence to never ever quit. So as I was attending, I'm not going to call the college then, but as I was in my AA degree seeking journey, I remember taking 4 classes one semester, and I wasn't just a young student. I was young, but I had a lot going on.
Right.
I was a mother of 1. I was pregnant with my 2nd child. I was working 2 jobs, a single parent. So I had all these other elements to focus on. And between there, my son was born. I remember that semester after he was born, I went back to school. Okay, so I'm aiming 4 classes. And I failed 3, and I passed 1 with a C. And the next consecutive semester, the same thing happened. Now, I'm going to be honest, I ran to class, did the best that I could, but I didn't say anything to my professors. I didn't ask for help. I didn't let them know what was happening. At one point, my son, who was 5 months old at the time, spent like a week and a half in the hospital. And being a single mother, I had to be at the hospital, with my son and just running back and forth for classes, waiting until a volunteer comes to give me a break. And I ran to class, ran back. And it happened the next consecutive semester. He was back in the hospital. I'm thinking, okay. To make a long story short, I remember going back to register because the first semester I had already received that financial aid probation. I was on probation for financial aid. The next semester, the same thing. So now I was not eligible for financial aid. So I went to my guidance counselor and I asked the simple question, I need to take 1 class because at this time I can only squeeze and pay for 1 class. And I asked her, I said, Dr. So-and-so, no, Miss So-and-so, what class of all the classes that I have failed the past 2 semesters, which one has been offered that I can take? And she turned around, got to her computer, look at my academic history, and turned back around, put her glasses down to the tip of her nose and looked at me and said, "You're not college material. Don't you see you're not college material? What you need to do is find your job in a convenience store or something, but you need to just drop out." And at that time, I could have walked away because I was so ashamed. I was ashamed before I actually walked there looking at my report card. I just asked her.
It was worse.
Right. And now it was like throwing salt in the wound. And then I asked her again and she said, well, you can take this class this semester and that class next semester, but you will have to earn an A. So if you're not going to earn the A, waste of time. And I developed a sense of consistency then. I had to take the class. I had to put all my effort in it. I had to figure out now I still have my 2 kids. I'm still working 2 jobs. I'm still a single parent, but I have to do it because I've always told myself, if I can't do it, when you say I cannot, I have to prove to you that I can.
That I can. Yes.
And then that's number 1. Number 2, my children. I have very vascular children, just to be frank. And so I have to lead by example. And I have told myself time and time again, my children, they're not the ones who do as I say and not as I do. That really don't work with them in all aspects. No, it don't. Because I'm going to be frank, they will remind me, bet you didn't, or bet you did. So I know that if I don't be consistent, if I don't achieve the goal that I sought to achieve, I really cannot sit there and encourage them not to quit.
Right.
Because I know they would let me know, well, you quit. that was not a good example. So the quest to lead by example
Yes.
is what caused me to develop that consistency.
So you've also placed, from along your journey from where you started to where you
Mhm.
are today, you've placed a significant emphasis on education. Um, you, you know, what is the motivating factor behind your drive for education?
So number one, I, God rest bless this the soul of my grandmother. Rest in peace. And I hope none of my family member who sees this video don't feel bad. I really just got to share. So, I was raised with my grandparents. 10 years old, almost 10, my granddad passed, and then it was my grandmother. But Dr. Maxine, my grandmother did not know how to read.
Right.
She did not attend school. And I'm sure it wasn't only my family, but with most families, the first child stayed home and take care of the siblings while parents out working. So
Right.
she actually did not have the opportunity to attend school.
Right.
But she said something years and years ago, even when she didn't have it, she would say, and I'm going to just say it the way she said it. She have to tie these couple pennies up in this thread bag to send the kids to school, because she would say, I didn't have the opportunity to go. But she made a vow to herself growing up.
Mhm.
All the kids that she raised, that's being raised under her roof, will go to school. And she didn't, like I said, she didn't know how to read and write, so she had no education, but she ensured that her kids, her grandkids, her great-grandkids, and great-great-grandkids, because she was around for great-great-grandkids, who was in close proximity, would go to school.
Mhm.
And even though she couldn't check the homework, but she would ensure it was done. Because the first question that she would ask, if you have homework. And even though she couldn't check it, and sometimes you sit back and at the time you probably didn't appreciate that.
Right.
But the more the older you get, and the more you are aware now, is the more appreciative we are. And she would say to us, with a small community, a couple of the teachers went to church, same church.
Yes.
So
Yes.
she would say with it to us, and if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, I would hear about it Sunday.
Yes.
And so we know that she would hear about it Sunday in church. And that's one nugget right there. She pushes us, and even though it was right until the end of 9th grade, but she pushed us to have that fundamental piece of education.
Education. Mm-hmm.
Number two is, I didn't know my dad until I was almost 16. And I met him August, and I would have turned 16 that November. And when I met him, I wasn't in school. Because at that time, my grandmother didn't have the money to send us to school beyond the 9th grade. And of course, he asked, was I in school? And I'm like, no. And you could see the look in his face, but hey, nobody to blame but you. I didn't say that because then I would have been disrespectful.
Right.
So, and I remember he told me, I was having a conversation with him, and we're driving from Portmore to St. Mary. And I don't know if it's an hour or 2 hours drive, because he drove slow, how long it took. But on that long drive, he was a very quiet man. But one thing he said to me that I would always remember is, whenever you become a woman, because you will become a woman, you will have kids, and you will meet a guy, you will possibly fall in love, you'll possibly get married, and you'll have kids. And he said to me, whatever you do is earn the highest level of education that you can.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, when you have an education, you can become an independent woman. You can take care of yourself.
Right.
And so if that man is compromising your standard and your values, and that's not how he said it, but that's how I'm going to rephrase it. But if he's compromising your standard and your values and your happiness, you can tell him to go. And he said, and I'm listening to him, you can tell him to go without sitting there saying, well, if I tell him to go, I'm going to be over here financially struggling. I can't pay my bills on my own. I have to depend on him. But he said, whenever you're depending on him, whatever he's offering, be it good or bad, you have to accept. And I said, okay. And then he said to me, you have any questions? I said, no. And he said, but you have to listen. I said, you can tell him to go. And, you know, and no one knew what he meant. You can tell him to go because you're not you're not depending on him. So goodbye. And I don't know if that was the perfect example that he should have shared with me, but that's what he knew and that's what he shared, and I value that today. And then again, the third one is when you look at society again, we as African American,
Yeah.
and I don't do the racist thing, and I'm just saying I don't, but we, and his history can tell you, we need to be beneath at all times,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because we're not supposed to earn education.
Nope.
We're supposed to be beneath at all times. And so I push education now. And if you don't do it for anybody else, you do it for yourself.
For yourself. Yeah.
Right? Because that is one thing, going back to my grandmother would say, that is one thing you earn that
No one
cannot
can
be
take it
taken from you.
ever.
She say, you know, that time you didn't get diplomas, you get a piece of, you didn't get diplomas, then you get certification of completion from all age
Yes.
school.
Yes.
And she said, even if this piece of paper should get damaged, should burn, you earned it, you have it, it cannot be taken.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why I push education, because, and I told my daughter years ago, and I will share this also with some of my young ladies that I mentor, you can earn it for basically free.
Mm-hmm.
Why not take advantage of it? You can
Yep.
earn it for basically free. And I told my daughter, it's not like when I was in school, when I had to walk to school, I had to have lunch money.
Yes.
You know, rain or shine, we're walking here. And I told her, here, the bus stops at the gate just about.
Yeah.
Just get up and go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I say, well, and she said to me, but you still have to pay. I say, yes. And I'm not going to say unfortunately. I'm going to say, fortunately, I have to pay for your lunch because I'm not qualified. You know, at the moment, I don't qualify. When I was talking about, I
Right.
don't qualify for the reduced lunch. I said, but that makes me proud.
Yep.
And I told her, I said, that makes me proud that I'm not qualified for the free or reduced lunch. Not that I'm, you know, down talking anyone who is. I'm not. But I'm just
It's a
saying,
milestone for you.
right,
It's a personal measure from where you've been to where
right.
there's nothing wrong with getting it, but your
Mhm.
your journey have taken you past the ability to get it.
Thank you. And so, but I said, but why not just take advantage of it? It's yours, you earn it, you have it, it cannot be taken. That's why I push education.
So we've often heard about it, it's in the Bible. We hear it every day. You know, coming from the old school, you hear everything happened for a reason.
Mhm.
So we understand about seasons and reasons. People who come to destroy, some who come to teach lessons, some who come to restore along the way. Using that concept, who or what are your biggest influences in your life?
And I would say my biggest influences in my life, my number one are my children.
Mm-hmm.
I do what I do every day because I'm not thinking about myself. The day I became a mother, I stopped thinking about myself or putting myself first in certain aspects of life, because now I have a whole individual who depends on me and me only at the time. And so, and I also, say the good you do will follow
Yep.
the third and fourth generation. And I always say, if the good follows the third and fourth generation, the bad would follow my third and fourth generation. So I am careful not to do anything that would negatively impact my great grand, and great grandchildren,
Yep.
which I hope to see one day.
Yep.
So they are my biggest influencers in life. Everything I do, I think about them. I consider how this is going to impact them. And let me share this. I never shared with my kids anything, the stuff in my book about my childhood. I never shared it with them prior to writing this book. And then right before I decided to hit publish, I had a meeting with them. And I told them, I wrote this book, and I told them the reason for writing this book. And I said, look, I never had the strength to share with you some things that are in me. And I shared with them those things in the book. And I said, but I'm thinking about you. It's not about me, and it's about you. So people who knows you know that I'm your mother, and will know that this little girl was sexually abused. And I said, the stigma behind this. So if you are not comfortable talking to the three of them, if you're not comfortable with me publishing this book, I won't. Because I'm thinking about them. I won't. And I'll say, it's okay, we're okay with it. You can go ahead, and because it's coming from a good place, so you can go ahead and publish. So my biggest influencers are my children. And people say, why your children? Because influencers are supposed to be people who are way ahead of you, or who have done some successful stuff in life. They may inspire me, but they're not my influencers.
Right.
My children are.
But influencers are supposed to motivate you to a higher level in your life, to be better, to do more, to want more. So it is only logical that if you're living a life first for God, and then, for your children, they are influencers.
Right.
Because their wants and their needs and their well-being influence you
to do. Right.
So there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But sticking to what you were talking about, what we've found and what I believe to be true is that there is a cycle of abuse that happens from generation to generation because we don't talk about it. Because it is the shame, and it's always first the shame for you who was the victim in the first place, but then it's the secret of don't put family business in the street. And so until what I really admired about reading your journey was the fact that it was encouraging in that you weren't coming from a place of blame, but from a place of relief and freedom and sharing a journey that didn't always have the best experiences, but then using those experiences to teach others and to motivate and influence others to move to a higher level in their life. And I applaud you for that, because many of us have not gotten to that place in our life where we talk about where we've been and what has happened to us. Many of us still live with that shame, feeling damaged along the way. But your journey inspired a lot of us to look deep,
Mhm.
truthful, and to be honest on our journey to find our authentic self. And I like I said, I really applaud you for that. And I applaud the fact that your children saw it not as a stain, but as a freedom sharing to help others. So I am talking to Dr. Diana Clark. Moving forward, You Like Me Can Overcome. That is her book. And as I said before, if you haven't read it, you should. There is something for everyone, whether you're ready to deal or not deal. It might but just be that door that will help you to come to terms with a lot of that stuff. Clean out that wound so you can have real healing. So share with us the concept of self-love, healing, and restoration. Because from looking at your journey through your writing and talking to you, we can see you have not resided in any dark place, but you have used all those to move you forward, you know, like You Like Me Can Overcome. So share with us the concept of self-love, healing, and restoration, and tell us how we can achieve that.
You know, when it comes down to self-love, there was a time when I didn't love myself. And until I start using that mirror effect. And oh my God, the mirror effect is crazy. But if you don't love yourself, there's no healing if you don't love yourself. And that's probably not gospel, but that is just my perspective.
Right.
If you don't identify who you are and start loving yourself, then there is no room for healing and restoration.
Right.
You have to be able to love on you. And then there comes the healing process. Now, part of loving me is being comfortable now with who I am.
Right.
It's been comfortable, you know, it's no longer dressing a certain way to feel love from others or to get, you know, or it's no longer the hairstyle so I can look a certain way. No, because if I have these fake dreads in, I love myself just as much as I love myself when I'm wearing my afro.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about starting to be comfortable with who you are, starting to not allow anything to cause you to lose focus in the person that you have become or the person who you're becoming, because you know it's a continuous thing. And so when you start to love yourself and you start to think deep and say, I'm no longer this little damaged girl. No, I'm no longer this little girl who walk around feeling dirty. No, I am this phenomenal woman. I love me. And if the next person don't love me, I'm still loving me. And it's a part of just your self-esteem. You know, because when you don't love yourself, where's your self-esteem? There is none. And so the simplest of rejection, you don't love yourself, you don't have that self-esteem, walking into healing and restoration, the simplest of no or rejection from anyone can cause you to go right back to the place where you were 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, I said this to Dr. Titus, who's a friend of mine. He had to write a foreword for my book. So I sent him the rough draft. And I was very reluctant to have him, you know, write the foreword because, he's a guy, so I don't want him to see this book. He's a guy. And I said to him, Dr. Titus, when you read through this rough draft, don't judge me. I said it just like that. He said, why? I said, when you read, don't judge me. And you have to promise me that you will see me as the same person you met 3 years ago or whatever, how long it was. I haven't changed. And I said it to him. And then when he read the book, he called me up and he said, not only do I see you as the same person I saw 3 years ago, I see you now as a woman
Mm-hmm.
who don't allow obstacles to cripple
Mm-hmm.
her path. I see you now, and he started describing some stuff. I see you now as a woman who knows that there is a lesson
Mm-hmm.
in our aspect of life. And now that you have walked away from that with your head up high, you are now encouraging, you're not going by yourself, but you're taking other young ladies with you. So I can never judge you. I don't judge you, I don't see you. And I said to him, thank you. And we were having a conversation. I said, even if I wanted to date, because by then I had done give up on men, stopped dating, all that. I said, even if I wanted to date, I couldn't, because who's gonna want me now? And I had that in my mind. But then I came back to myself and say, if they don't want you, you want you. Because I love myself. I am healed, and I'm going through my restoration. I'm going through my restoration. So once you get there, I guess the greatest thing we can do is loving ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That is the greatest, one of the greatest achievement.
Do you think that healing and restoration evade a lot of us because of the fact that we're afraid of being judged, so we hide parts of us that we never visit but live uncomfortably with it?
Absolutely. Absolutely so. And even with me, the more I talk, the more I'm healed.
Yes.
The more I share, the more I'm healed. And I have one lady that called me. When she called me, she was crying tears. And I'm like, this big woman calling me crying. Because I couldn't understand at first.
Right.
I don't know what happened. And then she
Mm-hmm.
finally got it out. And she says to me, thank you. For what? Because I don't know, it's not someone that we talk. She got my number and she called me. She's like, when she could get a word out, she said, thank me. And I'm like, for what? And she says to me, I heard about your book and I read your book and I'm cry like a baby. And I said, what happened? And she said, because this happened to me years ago. This is an older woman, years ago. And I never had the strength to talk about it because my grandmother says, you don't talk about it. And she said, throughout life, I have suffered at the hands of men because I know what the problem is, but I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't share this problem so that my ex-husband or other guys that I dated knew what I was dealing with. And so because they didn't know what I was dealing with, they sure didn't know how to help me cope.
Mm-hmm.
So I have suffered. And so she talked to me about it. And after she talked to me about it, I just listened because I didn't know what to say either. I just listened. And all she wanted was an ear. But yes, we evaded because of the secret. And I think we have to get to the point where we are no longer ashamed. And, I was talking to a young lady a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago, and she said, I told her I still wasn't comfortable just sitting in front of a crowd talking. I said I'm more comfortable sitting on the Zoom because I know people are going to watch it, but they're not there while I'm talking. Right. And she say, I understand, but that is one step that I need you to take for me one day. So we have to get to the place where we are no longer ashamed. Because when I tell you about that word being ashamed, can keep us in bondage for a lifetime.
It enslaves us and it causes us to be victims for our entire life, while giving a free pass to the people who hurt us along the way because we take it all on us. And we take it always to mean that I must have done something
Right.
to happen to me. And then we get to the point where even when you're able to say it, the fallout from it is so great, especially in your situation with family and all, the fallout is so great that we still live that double life of knowing
Right.
and trying to heal, but then still straddling the fence to try to appease people.
Right.
So it is a double-edged sword, but I firmly believe that while you may not be comfortable to discuss it in person in large groups, the fact that people are able to access you one-on-one to be able to start that process of sharing and healing because you took that step to share is a first step to get to the next level. And maybe you'll take that step along with those people that you're taking along with you, but it's a process. And I am happy you shared, and I am even happier that people are receptive to it enough to want to talk to you about how do they get to that place where you're at this point. Because there are so many of us who live with stuff that we're so uncomfortable with ourselves.
Right.
You know, like somebody say, you can't live with yourself. That's an old expression, but it is true.
It is true.
I have to learn how to live with ourselves and love on ourselves in the process. So while I was going through your book, I saw an episode about a graduation and some shoes. And for me, I took that to equate it to every time I saw you or every time I seen your pictures or everything, one of the most noticeable things right off the top is always shoes. So I know you have a love for shoes. What drove that? Because I'm under the impression that it's a story in your book, and I'm not going to know. Anybody want to know would have to read it. But
so my love for shoes, man, I'm telling you, that came from about 42 years ago. I just told my age just about 42 years ago. And talking about shoes though, I decided I was going to stop buying shoes, but I found myself this last week. I just ordered 5 pairs of shoes.
Hey.
and so this is what happened. Growing up, like I said, I was with my grandparents. And it was 5 of us, 5 of my mother's children, that is, with my grandmother. And starting out, you'll have 2 pairs of shoes. One for church on Sundays and one for school during the week. Now, with walking all these miles on the rocks and dirt road and tar road, and you know how the roads are, shoes goes quickly. No matter how strong the pair of shoes is for school, it do not last the entire year. So, you know, if they couldn't glue it together or try to sew it back together. So it got to the place one time where I had no shoes. So I was walking to school barefooted. And I remember saying to myself one morning, what's the purpose of taking a shower and washing, you know, your feet? I'm going to walk to school barefooted. And I walked to school barefooted back and forth for a period of time. And one of my grandmother's friend sent her a nice pair of, it was penny loafers. And I wore the same size as my grandmother. And she just couldn't bear to see me going to school without shoes anymore. So she gave me that pair of shoes, and she had that shoe for so long. Not a scratch on it. 3 months on the school, there go the shoes messed up. So, and I told myself then that would never happen to me again. As an adult, I am going to buy shoes. And from walking to school barefooted, then when I, you know, graded here and going to school, I had 1 pair of black shoes. Dress code was black shoes, graduation. And I wore that one pair of black shoes so much the heels were scratched up. So the shoes, visualize the shoes. The shoes itself was black, but the heels were all different colors. It was so scratched up. I thought about using some polish, but the polish didn't work. And I remember telling my friend, I'm not going to graduation because there's no way I can wear these shoes. And I had no money because I had 2 children. So I had no money to buy a pair of shoes. And my friends say, all the struggle going through school, and if you don't go to your graduation, we're through. And I took this shame face and I went to my graduation. And I don't even think anybody noticed that shoes.
Nope.
Was that damaged. I don't think anybody even, but it was that self-consciousness about it. And so as I journeyed on and find myself a little bit financially able, where I can purchase shoes, even if I don't need the shoes. If I walk in the store and it calls my name, I'm walking out the store with the shoes. And that is why I developed the love for shoes.
See, I say that all the time, that
Yeah.
I don't just buy shoes to buy shoes. I walk in the store and it speaks to me.
Yeah.
So I'm
And
glad I am not the only one.
I walk in the store and it speaks to me. It can't fit me, but I'm going to buy it just because I can. And I have done that. And, you know, life just takes us through some path. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how hurtful it was. Sometimes, you know, it's good to sit down and laugh about it. And we have learned some lessons. He has really taught us some lessons. To give. Number one is to give.
Yeah.
You have to be able to give. And so as I was packing the other day, relocating, I looked up at my desk and I said, oh, of my old job. And I said to my coworker who was going to take this office, I had 25 pairs of shoes under my desk at work. And I say, leave them there Christmas, I'll come back and get them. And as I got home, my sister was here packing my stuff in my room. And she met me at the door and she said, it's about 30 pairs of shoes right here that I'm throwing out. You don't need them. You can't wear them. You haven't worn them. It's dry rot. And I don't throw away shoes, even if it's dry rot. I don't throw it away. So there I go, 25 pairs at work, throw away. She met me with 35 pairs being thrown away. I'm like, now I think I'm going through withdrawals. So that is my love for shoes. You know, making up for last time, you cannot, they say you cannot make up for last, you know, for what you didn't have. But I think that's
They also said you're not supposed to look back. You're supposed to look forward, forget what happened yesterday. But in your work, it's been a reflection. It's been a reflection of what has happened. And that reflection have helped you to carve paths forward. But it's also helped you to motivate others using your life lessons. So, you know, there is a lot that we've been taught growing up that turn out, it's not necessarily the wisest instructions for us. And we have to break that habit of holding on to, you know, not everything that we've been told is the gospel. We need to let some of it go along the way. So I've been talking to Dr. Diana Clark, mother, woman of God, mentor, author of the book, Moving Forward, You Like Me Can Overcome. She is the founder and host of this webcast, Moving Forward, Talk with Dr. Diana Clark. And she's had an amazing story to share. I've been able to see her journey, to witness it through her, from her own perspective of telling her own story. So my final question for you, outside of your children, what do you want your legacy to be?
Outside of my children, and every time I share this with my own children, what my legacy outside of them should be, they laugh. I want to be remembered as the simple woman, very simple woman who used her life to impact hundreds of women who use her life to help others to shape their own life in a positive direction, who use her life, to just shine. You know, when I'm thought about, oh yeah, that's the simple lady who once told me that nothing has power unless you give it that power. That is
Absolutely.
that simple lady. I'm a very simple person. Just joke, laugh around. But this is the simple lady who would not allow me to give up on life. Who would not allow me to give up on life. That's the simple lady who told me you can use your own story to shape others. Because the thing about it is I'm using my story to shape 10 people here. But
Mhm.
what I must remind them is that when you have shaped your life in a positive direction, you do not keep that to yourself. You
Mhm.
find another 10 ladies or gentlemen.
Yes.
And then when you have motivated and when you have worked with those 10, you ask them, it's like paying it forward to
Yes.
find 10 more. So if we can, and that's how I want to be remembered. That's just how I want to be remembered.
It is said, if you want to live forever,
Mhm.
teach others.
Teach others. Hmm.
And so I believe that to be true.
Yeah.
Dr. Clark, thank you for sharing your platform with me. Thank you for allowing me to take over. And thank you so much for your honesty and your authenticity in sharing your journey.
You are so welcome, and thank you for taking your time to share this platform with me.
Thank you.
I honestly, when someone brought that to my attention, said, "Hey, you should have someone interview you." I said, "No, no, 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 I'm not doing that." But then, it's funny that sometimes we want to learn from others,
Hmm.
but then we don't want to share with others.
Yes.
And that is something that we all have to, because I always say we all have a story to tell. My story is not your story. Your story is not someone else's story, but we all have a story to tell. And within our story, there's always a person to be reached.
And there are similarities in story, but each person's story is their story to
Mm-hmm.
tell. And as you said at the top of the hour, God brought you through it all
Mm-hmm.
with a reason.
With a reason.
And we have to, in order to walk obediently in our purpose, we must do what it is we're called to do. So thank you for sharing and thank you for your obedience.
You're welcome. And until next time, this has been Moving Forward Talk with Diane.